Why parents forced my brother into years of unpaid labor while spoiling me to maintain appearances. When I tried to help him escape, they had me declared mentally unstable and destroyed everything I had. But I turned the tables, gathering medical records and hidden documents that exposed not only their lies, but an entire community's twisted, well-kept secret. In my remote Alaskan settlement, every third infant born was designated a debt child. The ritual took place when you reached the age of 10. Your guardians would press a copper medallion into your palm until it left an indelible imprint. That mark signified your servitude to the family enterprise. No compensation, no entitlements, no prospects. You could not marry, could not possess anything, could not depart until you had generated $1 million in profit for the family. No one ever achieved that sum. The other youngsters received stipends and educational endowments. Indentured children were given work schedules and production quotas. My parents operated 3 convenience stores, and my sibling, Na, had been toiling in them since his 10th birthday. At communal spiritual gatherings, guardians would converse about their debt children as if they were prized livestock. Only our community members attended these assemblies. Outsiders were not welcomed. Seda endured a 16-hour shift yesterday, Mrs. Koyak would remark. Everyone pretended this was normal. But I observed my brother aging more rapidly than any adolescent should. Dark circles beneath his eyes, stooped shoulders, hands calloused from endless carton slicing. I was the second offspring, the fortunate one who was permitted to have aspirations, and I dreamed of liberating him. The solution emerged during my economics lesson. Mr. Aftertikiak was explaining corporate frameworks when he mentioned something regarding minors and agreements. My heart began to pound because, technically, Na had been 10 when they compelled him to commence employment. I initiated investigations using public library computers, conducting cautious online searches when my guardians were asleep. What I uncovered caused my hands to tremble. Everything they were doing was unlawful. Child labor, unpaid compensation, wrongful confinement. But in our community, American statutes were something that applied to others. So, I became resourceful. I began to document everything. Images of Na's time cards, recordings of him working at 2 in the morning on school evenings, screenshots of family group conversations where relatives boasted about their debt children's exhaustion. But I required more than evidence. I needed confederates. That is where the notebook became useful. During family gatherings, while adults compared their debt children's output, I would discreetly pass notes to the other unburdened siblings. Your sister deserves a better fate than this. Would you like to assist me in altering things? Most were too apprehensive. But gradually, a few began to heed. We convened in secret. Library study areas, deserted parking lots, any location our guardians would not consider searching. There were 7 of us eventually, all unencumbered children with enslaved siblings. Each of us had a function. Denali monitored the finances, demonstrating our siblings had already generated millions. Kodiak researched legal precedents. I continued accumulating evidence. The strategy was straightforward. Amass sufficient proof, identify the opportune moment, and reveal everything simultaneously. That moment arrived at the Tutka family's eldest daughter's engagement celebration. She was a debt child who had somehow earned her million at age 32, the first in 5 years. The entire community assembled to commemorate this triumph. Halfway through her discourse on appreciation and familial honor, I noticed her hands trembling. She repeatedly touched her copper scar. When she concluded, her father declared her recompense. She could now wed his business associate's son, a man twice her age who required a spouse who comprehended diligence. I rose, not part of the scheme, but I could not endure another instant. She is not liberated if you are still dictating her existence, I declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. My mother's complexion paled. Uncle started approaching me, but then Denali stood up. They owe my brother $200,000 in wages. Kodiak was next. That is termed human trafficking. One by one, we raised our mobile phones, displaying receipts, audio recordings, photographs, years of documentation. This ends now, I stated. That is when the entrance opened. 3 individuals in formal attire entered. Attorneys we had contacted from a labor advocacy organization. Behind them, 2 law enforcement officers. We have been apprised of multiple labor code infractions, one announced. The room erupted. Guardians seized their phones while debt children stood motionless. The attorneys navigated through the assembly with practiced skill, distributing business cards. We represent a consortium of labor rights organizations, the lead attorney proclaimed. We have obtained substantial records of systemic violations. Officer Chun, the younger of the 2 police officers, produced a notepad. We are here to conduct welfare checks on any minors currently employed. My father stepped forward, his expression composed, but his knuckles white. This is a private religious ceremony. You possess no authority. We possess every authority when child welfare is involved, the attorney interjected. No arrests tonight. Merely inquiries. My mother had her phone out, recording everything. This is harassment of our cultural customs. I demand badge numbers. The room erupted in rapid texting. I recognized the pattern. Our community's emergency communication network designed for precisely this situation. Within moments, messages would reach every household with a debt child. The Tutka patriarch raised his voice. Everyone under 18, kindly proceed to the youth room for a prayer gathering. Debt children began to exit obediently. Nuka moved with them. His shoulders slumped. I attempted to follow, but my mother's hand clamped onto my arm. Family remains united, she whispered. Officer Chin observed the separation. We will need to converse with those young individuals. After they conclude their prayers, my father said smoothly. Now, what documentation do you require? The lead attorney stepped forward. Employment records for any workers under 18, solely to verify compliance. We will need to consult with our legal counsel regarding religious exemptions first, my father replied. Through the window, I observed two families quietly entering their vehicles. Inside, guardians huddled in clusters, phones illuminated as they coordinated responses. The youth room door remained firmly shut. I retrieved my phone, showing Officer Chin the images I had collected. These were captured at 3 o'clock in the morning last Tuesday. That is my brother. Those images are taken out of context, a new voice interrupted. Marcus Ikaluit, the community's legal representative, strode in, adjusting his necktie. I represent the families here. Any documentation you are viewing pertains to our Cultural Apprenticeship Initiative. He produced a folder thick with papers. Traditional skills instruction protected under religious freedom statutes. We have been preparing this documentation for years. My stomach sank. They had been prepared for this. I would like to speak with. Officer Chin checked his notes. Na about his work experience. The youth room door opened. Na emerged with the other debt children, their expressions carefully blank. When Officer Chin approached him, Na's response emerged rehearsed. I am acquiring valuable proficiencies from my family. It is an honor to contribute. The words sounded hollow in his fatigued voice, but he maintained eye contact with the officer. Behind him, other debt children nodded in affirmation. We will require copies of that apprenticeship documentation, the attorney stated to Marcus. That necessitates tribal council endorsement to share with outsiders. Marcus replied smoothly. I can submit the request, but it requires time. The attorneys exchanged glances. This was not unfolding as any of us had anticipated. We will be conducting formal interviews over the forthcoming weeks, Officer Chin announced. This is merely the commencement of our inquiry. Guardians throughout the room exchanged satisfied expressions. The framework they had built was enduring. As the officers and attorneys departed, taking our contact information, I caught Na's gaze. He shook his head slightly. Do not press it, his expression conveyed. Not now. The remainder of the celebration dissolved into disarray. Families hastened home, phones vibrating with directives. My guardians flanked me as we proceeded to the vehicle. You have brought disgrace upon this family, my mother said, her voice lethally quiet. But we will manage this. We always do. I awoke the following morning to my housemate shaking me. You need to see your vehicle. All 4 tires had been punctured. Traitor was spray painted across the windshield in red. I contacted the police, but when they arrived, none of my neighbors had witnessed anything. At my workplace that afternoon, my employer, one of my uncle's fishing companions, summoned me into his office. We need to discuss your future here, he stated, not meeting my eyes. There are community concerns regarding your recent actions. I knew his son was also a debt child. I had observed him working the night shift at their hardware establishment. Are you terminating me? Let us term it a mutual parting. Effective immediately, my phone vibrated. The family group chat notification indicated I had been removed. A new chat named True Family had been established. My siblings who had supported me at the celebration were also absent. That evening, Denali telephoned. My landlord just provided me 30 days to vacate. Claims I violated my lease, but will not specify how. They are coordinating, I stated, severing us from everything. CPS scheduled my interview, she said, 3 weeks from now. They stated it is not an emergency removal situation, so they are backlogged. 3 weeks. The community would have ample time to prepare their narratives. At school the next day, my younger siblings walked past me in the corridor without acknowledgement. When I attempted to converse with my sister, she retreated. You are harming our family, she declared loudly enough for others to hear. Why can't you just leave matters undisturbed? The grocery store was my next surprise. My credit card was declined at checkout. The manager apologized, stating their system showed technical difficulties, but when I contacted the bank, they confirmed my account had been frozen. There appears to be some unusual activity, the representative stated vaguely. You will need to appear in person to resolve it. The bank manager, another community member, explained there were apprehensions about fraudulent transactions. It would require weeks to investigate and unfreeze my funds. I subsisted on the cash in my wallet and the generosity of Kodiak, who allowed me to reside on his sofa. But I could discern the strain in his gaze. His family was also pressuring him. The community Facebook page became active with posts about external assaults on our customs. My photograph from the celebration was shared dozens of times. The remarks ranged from disappointed to menacing. Then came the restraining order. My guardians filed it, alleging harassment and emotional distress. They claimed my erratic conduct at the celebration and my persistent efforts to dismantle our family made them fear for their safety. Jake messaged me that night. My parents say I cannot communicate with you until this misunderstanding is resolved. I am sorry. One by one, Our group was being isolated. Kodiak made a discovery that offered us brief hope. The apprenticeship documents Marcus had displayed were all dated recently, notarized by the mayor's spouse just last week. They are backdating everything, he stated, creating a paper trail that never existed. But when we presented this to the attorneys, we encountered another obstacle. The mayor's spouse claimed she had been notarizing these documents for years. She even possessed a filing system with papers purportedly dating back decades. It is your assertion against an entire community's documentation, our legal aid attorney explained. This is going to be an arduous struggle. I stood at the courthouse steps, restraining order papers in my hand. Contesting it would cost money I did not possess. But not contesting meant accepting legal separation from my own family and from Naka. The prudent choice was to conserve resources for the larger conflict. But observing my brother vanish behind legal barriers while our guardians tightened their hold made the prudent choice feel like abandonment. I contemplated the Tutka daughter, finally free at 32, only to be handed to another master. About Na's exhausted countenance as he recited his memorized lines about all the debt children who had been failed by every system intended to safeguard them. The community had constructed their stronghold meticulously, brick by brick over generations. They had prepared for this day, knowing someday someone might challenge them. Every escape route had been charted and obstructed. But they had made one error. They had raised us to be intelligent, to think strategically, to persevere, and I was not going to cease now. My mother's subsequent action arrived through my apartment building's management office. The property manager summoned me, explaining that multiple tenants had complained about disruptive visitors at my unit. I had not had any visitors except Kodiak. We prioritize community harmony very seriously, she stated, sliding a notice across the desk. This is your initial warning. The warning cited noise complaints from times I had been at my workplace. Security footage would demonstrate I was not even home. But when I requested to view it, she asserted the system had been malfunctioning that week. Outside her office, I recognized 2 vehicles in the parking area, both belonging to community members. They were not even attempting to conceal their coordination anymore. My mother appeared at my workplace the following afternoon, accompanied by 3 other community mothers. They stood outside the coffee establishment where I had found temporary employment, holding hands in what they termed a prayer circle. Patrons started avoiding the entrance. My manager watched nervously through the window. Is that your family? Unfortunately, they are claiming you are mentally unstable, that you require assistance. I observed my mother dab at her eyes with a tissue, feigning sorrow for passing strangers. One woman paused to console her, and I could discern my mother's lips moving, disseminating her venom. I need this occupation, I informed my manager. He appeared uncomfortable. I understand, but I cannot have this disrupting business. The prayer circle persisted for 3 days. Each day, different community members joined, creating the impression of widespread apprehension. They brought placards, pray for our lost child, and mental health matters. On the 4th day, my manager handed me my final remuneration. My parents' next weapon was more intimate. They released my college counseling records to the community Facebook page. Sessions from my freshman year when I had struggled with anxiety after comprehending the truth about our family. The counselor's notes, obtained through my mother's signature on old forms, depicted a portrayal of paranoia and familial discord. Patient exhibits indications of delusional thinking regarding family dynamics. One entry read, I remembered that session, endeavoring to elucidate the debt child system to an outsider who could not conceive such a thing existed. The comments flooded in. Community members shared their own accounts of my troubled conduct. The instance I had questioned the ceremony at age 12. My disregard for tradition. Each story meticulously crafted to construct a narrative of mental instability. Denali called that night, her voice trembling. They are employing the same strategy on all of us. My parents just filed for a wellness check, claiming I am suicidal. Are you safe? For now, but my housemate is frightened. She is already seeking someone to assume my portion of the lease. We were being systematically demolished, and the authorities designed to protect us were being weaponized against us. My 12-year-old sister's testimony to her school counselor was the subsequent blow. She claimed I had cornered her at school, raving about family conspiracies, that I had frightened her with wild accusations about our guardians. The truth was simpler. I had inquired if she was all right, if she needed anything. But in her statement, guided by our parents' coaching, it became harassment. Child Protective Services summoned me for an interview, not concerning the debt children, but regarding my potential threat to my younger siblings. We have received concerning reports, the social worker explained. Multiple family members have expressed worry about your mental state and its impact on the children. I sat in that unadorned office, realizing the brilliance of my parents' tactic. Every attempt to rescue the debt children was being reinterpreted as the delusions of a mentally unstable individual who posed a threat to normal children. I am attempting to assist them, I stated, by disrupting their stable family environment. She looked at her notes. Your sister says you have been filling her head with disturbing stories. The interview lasted 2 hours. Every piece of evidence I had gathered was dismissed as an obsession. My documentation was reframed as stalking. My confederates were described as equally disturbed individuals I had convinced to share my delusions. Security footage from the stores became the next battleground. The attorneys had subpoenaed months of recordings, hoping to document the dead children's work hours. But when the files arrived, they were corrupted, except for specific clips. One showed me disputing with my father in the store, my face distorted with anger. Another captured me raising my voice at my mother. A third displayed me aggressively photographing Na while he attempted to work. Each clip meticulously preserved while the surrounding context vanished. Digital files can be temperamental, Marcus explained to the attorneys with practiced empathy. We have been intending to upgrade our system. The initial CPS interviews with the dead children proceeded exactly as the community had planned. 3 adolescents sat in the community center, calmly explaining their gratitude for their family's guidance. They spoke of acquiring valuable proficiencies, of contributing to something meaningful. I could be on the streets, one stated, his memorized lines delivered flawlessly. My family provided me purpose. The investigator took notes, finding no indications of physical maltreatment, no immediate peril. The dead children had been thoroughly coached. Their exhaustion explained as dedication, their scars as mishaps from learning their trade. The investigation will continue. The investigator informed me afterward. But I need to be candid. I am not observing what you described. That night, desperate for any leverage, I performed an action I would later regret. I still possessed my mother's Amazon password from when I resided at home. I logged in, searching for proof of the copper ceremony supplies. The purchase history revealed monthly orders of copper coins dating back years. Bulk acquisitions that suggested ongoing ceremonies, new children being marked regularly, but I had obtained it illicitly, rendering it useless as evidence. Worse, my mother had anticipated this. The next morning, I received an electronic mail from Amazon about suspicious account activity. My digital footprint on her account was now proof of my continued harassment. Denali's brother's Facebook post went viral within our community. My sister believes she is rescuing me, he wrote. But I was nothing before my family gave me direction. I was heading down a dark path. Working for my family saved my life. Denali's envy is destroying our bonds. The comments inundated the page. Other dead children sharing similar accounts. Each post meticulously crafted to demonstrate appreciation, to portray us as bitter siblings envious of the special bond between dead children and their families. I suggested to our attorneys that we investigate the mayor's connections to the community. His wife's notary stamp on the backdated documents was our strongest evidence of conspiracy, but the attorneys recoiled. Accusing local government officials without firm proof will complicate everything, they warned. We need to concentrate on the labor violations. But the labor violations were vanishing behind walls of paperwork and cultural explanations. The Federal Labor Department's response crushed what hope remained. They required more substantial evidence before initiating a formal investigation. The agent suggested we document patterns for another 6 months, then recontact them. 6 months. I thought of Na's hands, already scarred from years of box cutting. 6 more months of 16-hour days. 6 more months of stolen youth. 4 of our 7 Confederates succumbed to the pressure. One by one, they posted public apologies on the community page. They had misunderstood the situation. They respected cultural traditions. They were seeking counseling for their confusion. Each defection came with rewards. Jobs reinstated. Family relationships restored. Financial pressure alleviated. The community knew how to penalize, but they also knew how to pardon those who conformed. Then came Nuka's text. Private, sent from an unfamiliar number. Please stop. You are making everything worse for us. My hands trembled as I typed back. I am trying to help you. You are not helping. You are making them angry, making them push us harder. Please just stop. The text vanished moments later. The number disconnected, but his words tormented me. Was I fighting for them, or for my own need to be correct? My parents' offer arrived through their attorney. Graduate education fully funded. Therapy with a respected counselor to process my confusion. A chance to rejoin the family if I publicly apologized and acknowledged my misapprehension of our customs. The offer includes housing, Marcus explained over the telephone. Your parents wish to support your future despite everything. The underlying message was unmistakable. Submit or continue losing everything. Kodiak discovered something in the digital records that offered us brief hope. Bank transfers indicating offshore accounts. Funds flowing from the family businesses to accounts in locations with banking privacy regulations. But he had obtained it through illicit means, hacking into systems we had no right to access. We cannot utilize this, I stated, staring at the evidence that could expose everything. I know, he replied, but at least we know we are correct. Being correct meant nothing if we could not prove it legally. Mrs. Koyak's defamation lawsuit arrived the same day I was evicted. $50,000 in damages for malicious statements that harmed her business reputation. Her establishment had lost customers after my false accusations became public. Contesting the lawsuit while without a home seemed impossible, but not contesting meant accepting defeat, allowing her to prevail by default. I moved into my vehicle, showering at the gymnasium, endeavoring to maintain some dignity while my world crumbled. The Walmart parking area became my sleeping quarters. Their security cameras the sole witnesses to my new reality. My parents staged a wellness check at my former apartment, arriving with law enforcement to find me gone. The narrative disseminated swiftly. I had abandoned my residence, was living somewhere unstable, clearly descending into mental illness. The electronic mail terminating me from the coffee shop cited job abandonment, even though I had requested leave to manage legal matters. Another mark against my stability. Another piece of evidence that I was the issue. Sleeping in my vehicle in that Walmart lot, I gazed at the ceiling and pondered if they were correct. Had I forfeited everything for naught? Was I the delusional one? Perceiving abuse where there was only tradition? The CPS report arrived like a final judgment. Cultural practices observed do not meet threshold for removal. It concluded, no immediate danger identified. Case remains open for continued monitoring. Continued monitoring signified nothing. The debt children would continue laboring, continue suffering, while bureaucrats completed forms and submitted reports. Something within me fractured with Jake's betrayal. His family's fishing permits were their lifeline, passed down through generations. But those permits had been acquired through profits from debt children's labor. The entire framework was built upon their backs. I posted Jake's family tax documents online, illustrating the connections between their fishing empire and unpaid labor. The IRS audit that followed was swift and devastating. Within weeks, his grandmother lost the home she had inhabited for 40 years. The community's response was immediate and brutal. Jake's grandmother suffered a stroke during the audit stress, and everyone knew whom to blame. At the hospital, my mother located me in the waiting area. "Observe what your arrogance has accomplished," she stated loudly enough for everyone to hear. An elderly woman losing her home. "Are you content?" I desired to shout about the debt children who would never have homes, about Na's scarred hands and stolen future, but surrounded by community members in that hospital, I remained silent. Kodiak suggested capitulation. "Accept their offer," he stated one night as I charged my phone in his apartment. "Attend graduate school. Fight from within the system once you possess credentials." It was logical, strategic, everything they had raised me to be. But accepting meant abandoning Nuka now when he required me most. To control the narrative, I made another desperate choice. I publicly disclosed my teenage psychiatric hospitalization records before my parents could weaponize them. Yes, I had struggled with self-harm at 15. Yes, I had been hospitalized for 2 weeks. The truth was less dramatic than whatever story they would fabricate. "I am not flawless," I wrote. "But imperfect individuals can still recognize injustice." The medical records from the free clinic provided our first genuine evidence. Debt children presenting with repetitive stress injuries, chronic exhaustion, malnutrition, years of documentation that no one had ever linked to abuse. Dr. Nathaniel, who had treated them for years, admitted the truth when confronted. "I suspected," he stated quietly. "But these are close-knit families. I did not wish to fracture them over cultural disparities." His records showed what we had always known. Children working themselves into physical collapse, their development stunted, their bodies bearing the burden of family profit. But the judge scheduled our hearing for 6 months out. Civil rights cases necessitated thorough preparation, especially when cultural and religious freedoms were involved. 6 more months of waiting while debt children suffered. My parents' strategy became evident as weeks passed. Delay until I broke. Prolong proceedings until I either surrendered or yielded. They specifically desired me to require psychiatric intervention to end up in the same facility where they had sent difficult relatives previously. I began playing their game, attending family dinners with a recording device hidden in my pocket, smiling through Na's exhaustion while documenting every word, feigning reconciliation while gathering evidence. "We are so pleased you are coming around," my mother stated, serving me food purchased with debt children's labor. "Family is everything." I nodded and smiled and detested myself for the deception. But their own tactics had taught me that sometimes affection meant being willing to betray. The recordings captured fragments, my father stating, "Tradition implies sacrifice." My mother admitting they had saved thousands utilizing family labor. But our attorney explained it was insufficient. Nothing explicitly unlawful. Nothing that could not be explained as cultural metaphor. My parents knew about the recordings. They began speaking in coded language, switching to our indigenous tongue for sensitive subjects. The dinner conversations became performances, each of us pretending while maneuvering for advantage. The conflict shifted to interpretation. Was this systematic maltreatment or strict parenting, cultural custom, or labor exploitation? Every piece of evidence could be construed both ways depending on your viewpoint. Character witnesses lined up to testify about my troubled history. Educators who remembered my defiance. Relatives who recalled my attention-seeking behavior. Each story meticulously chosen to portray me as someone who had always resented our customs. 2 debt children reached out secretly, whispering support in chance encounters, but they feared losing the only family they had known. Where would they go if the system collapsed? Who would accommodate teenagers trained only for convenience store labor? Their apprehension was rational. We were attempting to destroy their world without being able to guarantee a better one. The pro bono attorneys withdrew, citing resource constraints. The case was too intricate, too culturally sensitive, too improbable to generate the clear triumph they required for their reports. We were left with overworked legal aid attorneys who had dozens of other cases. I found myself sleeping on the floor of a debt child named I. She worked from 4 in the morning to midnight shifts, and I witnessed firsthand what I had been striving to end. But I also observed something else. The peculiar contentment of routine, the pride in meeting quotas, the genuine affection between debt children who had grown up together in the stores. You do not comprehend, Ally informed me one night. This is all we know. You are attempting to save us from the only life we possess. Living among them revealed complexities I had overlooked. The psychological conditioning ran deeper than physical labor. They found identity in their service, purpose in their sacrifice. Disrupting the system meant disrupting them, too. The discovery that shattered my remaining innocence occurred by chance. I found pills in A's bathroom. Assumed they were vitamins. Research uncovered the truth. Contraceptives distributed to all debt children as health supplements. My parents had been chemically sterilizing them, preventing pregnancies that would impede work. Now I'd been consuming them since puberty, never knowing what they were. I reflected on all my grievances about college stress while my brother was being systematically denied his future. His body controlled at the chemical level. The guilt was overwhelming. Dr. Nathaniel's records confirmed it. He had prescribed the vitamins on parents' orders, telling himself it was reversible, that preventing teen pregnancy in workers was responsible. He had known and remained silent like everyone else who participated in this system. His documentation showed something else. I had benefited from free healthcare funded by debt children's labor. Every checkup, every prescription, every vaccination had been paid for by their suffering. I was not merely fighting for them. I was fighting against my own complicity. The inclination to exaggerate evidence grew stronger as our case weakened. A few altered documents, some enhanced recordings. Who would know? The truth was insufficient to achieve justice. But I resisted. Even as I observed Nucker work another 20-hour shift, even as more debt children developed chronic injuries, the honorable path felt like abandonment. But I pursued it anyway. My obsessive recording alienated our remaining Confederates. Every conversation became evidence collection. Every interaction was calculated for legal value. I was becoming what my parents accused me of, someone who perceived conspiracy everywhere, who trusted no one. Then came the revelation that altered everything. My parents had been recording, too. Every emotional outburst, every desperate phone call, every breakdown in my vehicle, they had captured it all. Marcus presented their evidence with theatrical flair, a compilation of my instability, crying spells, angry rants, moments of despair edited together into a portrayal of mental illness. They had been constructing their case as meticulously as I had built mine. The community rallied behind my parents with a fundraiser for their legal persecution defense. Thousands of dollars flowed in from families who saw themselves in my parents' struggle. They were not merely fighting me. They were fighting for their way of life. As the trial date approached, I stood alone. No Confederates left, no resources, no home. Just me against an entire community's testimony, armed with evidence that could be interpreted a dozen different ways. But I thought of Na's scarred hands, of Allie's stolen future, of the Tutka daughter handed from one master to another, of all the debt children whose only hope was someone willing to lose everything for the opportunity to liberate them. The system had taken everything from me, but it had made one error. It had left me with nothing left to lose. I found myself sleeping on Ollie's floor again, listening to her alarm activate at 3:45 in the morning. She stepped over me carefully, already moving in the practiced rhythm of someone who had been doing this for years. I feigned sleep while she prepared for another 20-hour shift. The pills I discovered weighed heavily in my mind. Every morning, she consumed one with her coffee, never questioning what they were. Just another vitamin, another supplement to keep her healthy enough to work. I waited until she departed before retrieving my phone. The trial date was 2 weeks away, and I possessed nothing new. Just the same evidence that could be explained away as cultural misunderstanding. Dr. Nathaniel had consented to meet me at a diner outside town. He appeared older than I recalled, shoulders bent with the weight of what he had been bearing. I have been prescribing those vitamins for 15 years, he stated, gazing at his coffee. Told myself it was for their own good. Teen pregnancy would only complicate their lives. I recorded our conversation openly this time. No more concealment. Will you testify? He shook his head. My practice would be destroyed. My own family. Another dead end. Another person choosing self-preservation over truth. That afternoon, I discovered my parents had been recording me, too. Marcus presented it during our pretrial meeting. A compilation of my worst moments. Me sobbing in my vehicle. Me screaming at my mother. Me pacing Allie's tiny apartment at 2 in the morning, murmuring to myself. This is what the jury will observe, he stated almost sympathetically. A troubled young person attacking stable families. Our legal aid attorney appeared defeated. We possessed medical records showing injuries, but they could be explained as workplace accidents. We possessed evidence of unpaid labor, but it was protected under religious exemptions. We possessed proof of systematic control, but it appeared like strict parenting to outsiders. The community's fundraiser for my parents had amassed $30,000. They had hired 2 more attorneys, specialists in religious freedom cases. Meanwhile, I was down to my last $100 and stealing Wi-Fi from the McDonald's nearby. Kodiak called that night with news that caused my hands to tremble. 3 more families just filed apprenticeship paperwork. They are expanding the program. What? They are calling it a cultural revival, reinstating traditional values. The mayor's office is supporting it as preserving indigenous practices. They were not merely defending the system, they were expanding it. I drove to the courthouse the next morning to file another motion, but my vehicle ceased functioning in the parking area. The engine produced a grinding sound, then silence. The mechanic at the shop examined it for 5 minutes before delivering the verdict. Engine seized. You have been operating it without oil changes for too long. Another $2,000 I did not possess. Another problem I could not resolve. I walked the 3 miles back to Ali's apartment. My mind racing. Every path forward seemed obstructed. Every move anticipated and countered. That is when I observed Na outside our parents' store, unloading boxes. His movements were slower than I remembered. And when he raised his arm, I noticed something that made me halt abruptly. The copper scar on his palm was infected. Red streaks extended up his wrist, the skin swollen and inflamed. He continued working, disregarding what had to be excruciating pain. I took photographs from across the street, zooming in on the infection. This was not merely a scar anymore. This was medical neglect. Dr. Nathaniel's clinic was closed when I arrived, but I pounded on the door until he answered. You need to see this, I stated, showing him the photos. His complexion paled. That is blood poisoning. He requires immediate treatment. Then treat him. I cannot just. You have been medicating them for years. You have been part of the system. The least you can do is provide actual medical care. He stared at the photos again, and I observed something shift in his expression. Guilt, perhaps, or simply exhaustion from bearing secrets. Bring him in, he stated quietly. After hours, I will treat him off the records. Obtaining Nuka's presence was another challenge. I had to wait until his shift concluded at midnight, intercept him before our parents picked him up. He gazed at me with weary eyes when I explained about the infection. It is fine, he stated. Just part of the job. It is blood poisoning. You could lose your hand, or worse. He glanced at the store, then back at me. If I miss work tomorrow, I will cover for you. Say you are with me. They cannot violate the restraining order to check. It was a gamble, but he was too fatigued to argue. Dr. Nathaniel's treatment revealed more than just the infection. X-rays showed multiple fractures in Na's hands that had healed improperly. Blood work revealed malnutrition despite working in stores full of food. The vitamins had inflicted their own damage, too. Hormonal imbalances that would take years to rectify. This is systematic medical neglect, Dr. Nathaniel stated, documenting everything. I should have reported this years ago. Report it now, I stated. He looked at Na, then at me. The trial is in 2 weeks? Yes. I will need protection. If I testify, the community will destroy me. We will figure something out. But I had no idea how to protect him. I could not even protect myself. The next morning, Na's infection made the decision for us. He collapsed during his morning shift. Fever escalating to 104. A customer telephoned 911, and suddenly there were paramedics, law enforcement, and inquiries no one wished to answer. At the hospital, physicians confirmed what Dr. Nathaniel had found. Severe infection, blood poisoning, years of untreated injuries. They had to report it. Medical neglect of that severity triggered mandatory reporting. My parents arrived with Marcus, attempting to control the narrative. But hospital social workers are not as easily intimidated as CPS investigators. They possessed medical evidence, documented injuries, a paper trail that could not be explained away. This is still a family matter, Marcus argued. Cultural practices. Cultural practices do not override medical neglect, the social worker interrupted. We are initiating an investigation. For the first time in months, I felt something akin to hope. The investigation progressed rapidly. Every debt child had to be examined. Every family had to produce medical records. What they uncovered was incriminating. Years of untreated injuries, malnutrition, hormonal damage from the vitamins. Dr. Nathaniel came forward, bringing 15 years of records with him. His testimony was devastating. He documented everything, even as he had remained silent. Now facing potential criminal charges himself, he was prepared to speak. The trial date arrived with the entire community in turmoil. Half the families were under investigation. The other half were scrambling to distance themselves from the system they had all benefited from. I sat in the courthouse bathroom, vomiting from apprehension. Everything culminated in this. Years of evidence, months of struggle, all leading to a few hours before a judge. The courtroom was crowded. Community members filled one side, glaring at me. The other side held social workers, investigators, and a few journalists who had become aware of the story. My parents sat with their team of attorneys, appearing confident despite everything. They had constructed their defense meticulously. Religious freedom, cultural preservation, parental rights. They had experts prepared to testify about indigenous practices and the significance of maintaining traditions. Our side had medical records and one guilt-ridden physician. The judge entered, and I recognized her. Judge Martinez, known for being firm, but equitable. She had handled religious freedom cases previously. Marcus commenced with fervor, depicting a scene of cultural persecution. External forces attempting to obliterate indigenous practices, families fractured by misunderstanding. He was effective, I had to concede. every point crafted to elicit sympathy. Our attorney responded with facts, medical records, photographs of injuries, the vitamins that were actually birth control. Dr. Nathaniel's testimony about years of systematic neglect. Then Nuka was called to provide testimony. He sat in the witness chair, his bandaged hand visible to everyone. When questioned about his work, he began with the rehearsed lines. But then the prosecutor inquired about his hand. "It is infected," he stated quietly. "How long has it been infected?" "A few weeks." "Why did you not seek treatment?" He glanced at our parents, then back at the prosecutor. "I could not miss work." "What would happen if you missed work?" The courtroom was silent. Na's struggle was discernible on his face. Years of conditioning warring with the truth. "I would be punished," he finally stated. "How?" "Extra shifts. No food. Sometimes." He paused. "Sometimes what?" "Sometimes they would press the coin again to remind me." Gasps from the social worker's side, furious whispering from the community's side. The prosecutor displayed photos of other dead children's hands. Some had multiple scars pressed repeatedly as punishment. The medical evidence was unquestionable. My mother attempted to rise to speak, but her attorney restrained her. More dead children testified. Their narratives variations on the same theme. Labor, penalty, control, the vitamins they had never questioned, the injuries they had concealed, the education they had never received. By lunchtime, the community's defense was disintegrating. Marcus made one final attempt, summoning character witnesses to testify about my mental instability. The edited recordings of my breakdowns, the narrative of a troubled child attacking loving families, but it felt hollow now, confronted with the medical evidence. The judge's expression remained impartial, but I observed her looking at Na's bandaged hand repeatedly. Concluding arguments brought everything full circle. Our attorney spoke about children's rights, about labor laws that apply regardless of culture, about the distinction between tradition and exploitation. Marcus countered with religious freedom, parental rights, the danger of external interference in indigenous practices. He portrayed the dead children as willing participants in a cultural tradition. The judge called a recess to deliberate. Those 2 hours felt like an eternity. When she returned, her expression was solemn. "This court acknowledges the importance of cultural traditions and religious freedom," she began. "However, these rights do not supersede children's fundamental human rights to education, medical care, and freedom from exploitation," she continued, outlining her findings. The dead child system violated multiple labor laws. The medical neglect constituted abuse. The apprenticeship documentation was fraudulent. Effective immediately, all minor children engaged in unpaid labor must cease work. Families have 30 days to comply with labor laws regarding any adult workers. Medical treatment must be provided for all injuries sustained. The practice of marking children with copper coins is prohibited. The community side erupted, some weeping, others shouting about persecution. My parents sat frozen. Their meticulously constructed system crumbling in minutes, but the judge was not finished. Furthermore, any family found in violation will face criminal charges. CPS will monitor compliance. This court will reconvene in 90 days to assess progress. No criminal charges yet. No one going to prison, just an order to desist. It felt both like triumph and defeat. Outside the courthouse, families clustered in bewildered groups. Some dead children appeared lost, uncertain what to do without their work schedules. Others seemed cautiously optimistic. Na found me by the steps. "What happens now?" he inquired. I did not possess an answer. The system was broken, but nothing had replaced it. Families who depended on uncompensated labor would struggle. Dead children trained for nothing, but store work would require education, therapy, time to heal. My parents walked past without acknowledging me. The restraining order was still in effect. I was still without a home, without employment, without funds. But Nuka was free. Dr. Nathaniel approached, appearing older, but somehow lighter. "I am closing my practice," he stated, relocating south, starting anew. "I wish to apologize for everything." I nodded, too exhausted for forgiveness or condemnation. The subsequent months were chaotic. Some families adapted, employing actual staff. Others closed their enterprises. A few attempted to continue in secret, leading to arrests and further investigations. Na moved in with Ollie and me. We located a 2-bedroom apartment, barely managing to gather rent. He enrolled in GED courses, struggling with educational gaps from years of labor. The hormonal damage from the vitamins necessitated ongoing treatment we could not afford. The community divided. Some blamed me for demolishing their way of life. Others quietly thanked me for liberating their children. Most simply attempted to survive the economic upheaval. I found employment at a nonprofit organization focused on labor rights, utilizing my experience to assist other communities with similar practices. It paid barely enough to subsist on, but it felt like purpose. 2 years later, I sat opposite Na at our weekly dinner. He was 23, working part-time while attending community college. The copper scar had faded, but never disappeared. We did not converse much during these dinners. Too much history, too much sorrow. But we appeared every Tuesday, constructing something new from the remains of our family. He was learning to make choices, to desire things for himself. I was learning to coexist with being the individual who dismantled our community to preserve it. The other debt children were dispersed, some flourishing, some struggling, all bearing scars that went deeper than copper burns. My parents had adjusted, hiring employees, adhering to labor laws. We had not spoken since the trial. My younger siblings remained with them, informed I was perilous, unstable. Perhaps they were correct. The system was gone, but its phantoms persisted. In Na's hesitation before spending money, in the way former debt children still addressed their parents as sir and ma'am, in the families who had never recovered financially from paying actual wages, change had come at a cost none of us fully comprehended when we had begun. But observing Nuka choose his own classes, create his own schedule, live his own life, I knew it had been worthwhile. Some traditions deserve to perish. Even if it entails losing everything to extinguish them, even if it entails being detested by the individuals you are attempting to rescue, the copper scars would always remain. But they no longer determined anyone's future. That had to suffice.